Every strategy you have ever been given for handling disrespect assumes one thing: that you can leave. That is why none of them work on your family. Read that again, because it explains why you have consumed 100 videos on this, and nothing changed. Walk away, cut them off, remove yourself. All of it is good advice, and all of it is written for a co-worker, a friend, a man at a bar. None of it survives contact with a father you will see at Christmas for the next 20 years, or the woman you divorced and still share 2 children with. So here is the question: is there someone in your life you cannot cut off, who still gets to decide how your entire week feels? Be honest. 1 phone call, 1 comment at a dinner, and 3 days are gone. If that is true, then somebody who is not you is holding the controls, and the fact that you love them does not change the mechanics one bit. You cannot walk away from those people. So you have been trying to apply a strategy whose first instruction is impossible, and then quietly concluding that the failure was yours. It was not. We closed the last law of this series by telling you to choose who gets close. And the most common thing men said back was the same: what about the ones I never got to choose? This one is for that. Today you get the access ladder, 4 tiers. And the whole point is this: you cannot always control whether someone is in your life. You control completely which tier they operate on. And I will warn you now, the 4th tier is the one almost every man believes he already closed, and almost none of them have. It is the reason a 50-year-old man can still be reduced to a teenager in 1 sentence at his father's kitchen table. Stay to the end for that. 500 years ago, Machiavelli studied how a man changes a system he cannot destroy. And he arrived at a rule that fits your family exactly. When you cannot tear down an established order, you do not attack it head-on. You keep the outward forms intact, the ceremonies, the appearances, the expected observances, and you change the substance underneath quietly, over time. The people inside the system barely notice, because everything still looks the way it always looked. That is your entire strategy here. You keep showing up. You change what showing up gives them. Before tier 1, drop 3 words in the comments. I control access. Type it, because by the end of this, you will understand that you were never trapped. You were just giving away 4 things when you only owed 1. Before the ladder, understand why this specific disrespect cuts deeper than anything a stranger could do, because until you name the mechanism, you will keep blaming yourself for feeling it. 4 things make family disrespect structurally different. First, permanence. A colleague who disrespects you is a problem with an end date. You will change jobs. He will move on. Family has no end date, which means every unaddressed incident is not a single event. It is a precedent, and precedents compound over decades. Second, history. A stranger insulting you has to guess where you are soft. Your brother does not guess. He has 30 years of research. He knows the thing you were insecure about at 14, and he knows it is still in there somewhere. And he can reach it with 4 words in front of the whole table. Nobody else on earth has that map. Third, witnesses who will not help. When it happens at work, at least the room can privately agree that the man was out of line. At a family table, the same room usually has an interest in keeping the peace, which means the pressure lands on you to absorb it. Do not make a scene. You know how he is. He did not mean it. The system protects itself, and it protects itself by asking the injured man to be the reasonable one. Fourth, and this is the one nobody says out loud, you still want their approval, not their permission, not their money, their approval. Some part of you, at 45 years old, still wants your father to say that you did well. That wanting is not weakness, and it is not immaturity. It is the oldest wiring in you, installed before you had language, and it is the reason a man who can hold his composure through a hostile board meeting can be flattened by one remark in a kitchen. Now, before we go further, one honest thing needs saying, because this topic touches real damage for some men watching. What we are talking about here is difficult family dynamics and disrespect. If what you are living with is genuine abuse, ongoing and severe, that is not a video problem, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. That is a conversation for a professional who knows your actual situation. Everything below is about power dynamics inside ordinary difficult families. It is built to help you stand differently in a room you have to keep entering. So the obvious answer is to cut them off. And this is where the anchor of this whole video comes in. A psychiatrist studied exactly that decision for decades and found something almost nobody expects. His name was Murray Bowen, starting in the 1950s, first through research at the National Institute of Mental Health and later at Georgetown. He did something unusual. Rather than treating individuals, he studied entire families as single emotional systems. And he built a theory out of what he saw, published in 1978 in his collected papers. The cornerstone of that theory, in his own words, was a concept he called differentiation of self. And the last concept he added to the whole framework, in 1975, was one he named emotional cutoff. Here is what he found, and it is the counterintuitive core of this video. Differentiation of self is the ability to stay emotionally connected to your family while remaining a separate person inside it. The ability to hear something and think about it, rather than simply react to it. To be in the room, in the relationship, and still be yourself. Now compare that to cutoff. Cutoff is when a man handles an unbearable family relationship by severing it. Stops calling, moves away, goes silent for years, and it feels enormously like strength, like finally taking control. Bowen's conclusion was the opposite. He argued that cutting off is not differentiation at all. It is fusion wearing a different coat, because the man who has to physically remove himself in order to be unaffected is still being controlled by the relationship. He has simply solved it by distance instead of by development. And Bowen documented what happens next. The unresolved attachment does not disappear. It moves. It shows up in new relationships, which intensify to fill the gap, and the same pattern quietly reassembles somewhere else, with different faces in the roles. Sit with that, because it explains something you have probably watched happen. The man who cut off his father entirely, and then, 10 years later, has the exact same explosive dynamic with his boss. He did not escape the pattern, he relocated it. The distance felt like victory, and the pattern was in his luggage. So this video is not going to tell you to cut anyone off. Sometimes that is genuinely necessary, and you will know if it is. But for the ordinary case, the difficult father, the sniping brother, the mother who comments on everything, cutting off is the option that looks strongest and does the least. What actually works is harder and quieter. You stay in the room and you stop being reachable inside it. That is what the access ladder is for. Tier 1 of the access ladder, presence. Whether you are physically there, this is the only tier you might genuinely owe, and it is the one men obsess over, which is exactly backwards. Presence means showing up, the holiday, the funeral, the birthday, the pick-up and drop-off of your kids. For most men, refusing presence is either impossible or costs more than it is worth, because it detonates the whole family system and turns you into the story. The uncle who does not come. And here is what nobody realizes. Presence is also the cheapest thing on this ladder. It costs you an afternoon. The other 3 tiers are where your actual life gets spent. So give presence freely when it is owed, and stop treating it as the battleground. Go to the dinner, attend the thing, be, by every visible measure, a man who shows up for his family. This is the Machiavelli move in its purest form. You are keeping the outward forms perfectly intact. Nobody can point to a ceremony you skipped or an obligation you shirked. Your reputation inside the family stays clean, which matters more than men think, because a man who withdraws visibly hands his critics the narrative. And notice what this does strategically. When you are visibly present and generous with the form, nobody can build a case that you are the problem. Which means when you quietly close the tiers above, there is no incident to point to. No confrontation happened. You did not announce anything. You came to Thanksgiving. You were pleasant. You left at a reasonable hour. Everything looked normal. The substance underneath simply changed. And that is precisely how Machiavelli said, "A man survives changing a system he cannot destroy." The move this week is simple. Stop negotiating with yourself about whether to attend. Attend when it is genuinely owed, and put your energy where it actually matters, which is Tier 2. And decide the shape of your presence in advance, because that is where the real control lives. Arrive later, leave earlier. Drive yourself so you are never dependent on somebody else's timeline to get out. Sit at the end of the table rather than the middle. Have a reason to step outside for 10 minutes. None of these are dramatic. None of them are announcements. And together, they cut a 5-hour ordeal down to a manageable 2. You showed up, you were pleasant. You left at a reasonable hour, exactly like a busy man with a life does. Nobody can build a grievance out of that. And you kept most of your day. Tier 2, attention. Whether you are actually engaged while you are present. Here is the tier. Most men have never once considered separate from presence. Separating the two is the single most liberating idea in this video. You can be completely, verifiably in the room and give almost none of your attention to the person trying to bait you. Watch what usually happens instead. The comment lands, and your whole system locks onto it. You are still sitting at the table, but internally you are running the argument, constructing the response, replaying the last time, monitoring his face. He said 9 words and got 2 hours of your mind for free. That is the transaction, and you agreed to it without noticing. The disrespect was not the payload, your attention was. Withdrawing attention is not sulking, and it is not the silent treatment, which is just a loud way of staying engaged. It looks like this. The remark comes. You register it, the way you would register a car alarm outside. You do not respond, you do not defend, you do not signal that it landed. You ask your nephew about his season. You get up and help carry something to the kitchen. You are warm, you are present, and you are simply not available for the exchange he was opening. He needs a partner to run the dynamic, and you have declined, without a single word about declining. This is what a man of the pack does at a table he cannot leave. This is where you use what you already learned in this series. The flat look from the cold protocol, the silence that ends a game, the refusal to defend, all of it works at a family table, and it works better there, because your family has decades of data predicting that you will engage. When you do not, the pattern misfires, and there is nothing for them to escalate against. The move this week, at the next difficult gathering. Pick one comment you would normally have engaged, and give it nothing. No defense, no wounded look, no correction. Then immediately give your warmth to somebody else in the room. Watch what happens to the person who threw it. They will usually try once more, and then stop, because the machine only runs on your attention, and you just cut the fuel line. Picture how this actually goes. A man named Doug, 52, runs a crew of 11 people, and has not been rattled at work in a decade. Sunday dinner at his parents' house, his father says, across the table, "Still driving that thing? Or are we finally going to see you buy something decent?" Everyone hears it. The old Doug explains the truck, the mileage, why it makes financial sense, and spends the drive home rehearsing better answers. The new Doug hears it, lets it sit for 1 second, says Ha, and turns to his nephew to ask how the season went. That is it. No comeback, no coldness, no scene. His father tries once more 20 minutes later with a different angle, gets the same nothing, and by dessert the subject is dead. Doug did not win an argument. He never entered one, and on the drive home, for the first time in years, he is thinking about his own week instead of his father's sentence. Quick question, and this one will genuinely split the comments. When a family member repeatedly disrespects you, is it better to confront it directly and have the ugly conversation, or to say nothing and simply change what they get from you? Half of you believe the direct conversation is the only honest path, that anything else is avoidance dressed up as strategy. The other half know from experience that the direct conversation with certain people changes nothing and costs everything. They will simply rewrite it later as you attacking them. Both positions have real weight. Drop yours below. And the harder audit, be honest with this one. How much of last month did you spend, in your own head, on someone who was not thinking about you at all? Tier 3. Information, how much they know about your life. This is the supply line, and most men leave it wide open out of habit. What you are earning, what you are worried about, where things stand with your wife, that the business is going through a rough patch, that you are thinking about a move. It comes out naturally, because these are your people, and telling them is what you have always done. And then it comes back at you months later, shaped into a weapon. Well, you always did struggle with money. Are you sure that is wise, given what happened last time? I only mention it because you told me you were having doubts. Understand the mechanism clearly. Every piece of information you supply is raw material, and in a difficult family system, raw material eventually gets used, sometimes without malice, simply because it is available. The brother who mocks your business did not invent the details. You gave them to him freely at a dinner when things were good. Closing this tier does not mean lying, and it does not mean coldness. It means calibrating depth to safety. You keep talking. You just talk about the weather of your life, rather than the machinery. Work is busy. We are figuring it out. The kids are good. All true, all warm, all completely useless as ammunition. Save the machinery for the 2 or 3 people who have earned it, and understand that being related to you is not, by itself, earning it. And that last sentence is where most men resist. So let me put it plainly. You were taught that family gets full access by default, that holding anything back from blood is a kind of betrayal. It is not. Access is earned by conduct, in every relationship that has ever existed, and a family member who has consistently used what you told him has simply demonstrated what tier he belongs on. You are not punishing him by moving him. You are updating a permission he was granted decades ago, automatically, before either of you knew what he would do with it. Nobody would keep giving a business partner sensitive numbers after he leaked them twice. The only reason we do it with family is that we confuse loyalty with unlimited disclosure. They are not the same thing. You can be entirely loyal to a man and tell him almost nothing. 2 specific things to close first, because they do the most damage. Stop reporting your fears, and stop reporting your plans before they are real. Fears become the thing they reach for, when they want to make you smaller. Plans, spoken too early, invite 100 opinions, and in a family system, those opinions carry an emotional weight that a stranger's never would. Tell them after it is done. A finished thing cannot be talked out of you. The move this week. Pick one topic you routinely report on to a family member who uses it, and simply stop bringing it up. Do not announce a boundary. Do not explain. Just let the subject quietly go dry. Within a few weeks you will notice the questions stop, and something in the balance between you will have changed without one uncomfortable conversation. Tier 4. Influence. whether their opinion actually moves your decisions. And here is the one I warned you about, because nearly every man watching believes he closed this tier years ago. You would say your father does not run your life. You are an adult. You make your own choices. You have not asked his permission for anything in 20 years. Fine. Now answer these instead. When you achieved the biggest thing you have ever done, whose reaction did you picture first? When you are about to take a real risk, whose voice shows up in your head, listing the reasons it will fail? And does that voice have an accent you recognize? When you finally bought the thing, took the trip, made the change, was part of the feeling relief that they could not say anything about it now? That is Tier 4, still fully open. You did not close it. You just stopped noticing it, because it stopped speaking out loud and started speaking in your own voice. This is why the 50-year-old man goes quiet at his father's kitchen table. He is not intimidated. He is a competent, respected man who has spent 35 years unconsciously routing major decisions through a review board that has one member, and the member does not even know he sits on it. Here is the counter, and it is the hardest work in this video, because there is no clean move you make at a dinner. It happens alone. Take a decision you are currently avoiding. Write down the reasons you are hesitating. All of them, honestly, as they actually sound in your head. Then go through the list and mark which ones are yours, from your own judgment and your own values, and which ones are borrowed, in somebody else's voice, installed a long time ago. Most men find at least half the list is borrowed. That exercise is what Bowen meant by differentiation. Not distance, sorting, learning which thoughts in your own head are actually yours. And notice what closing this tier does to the other three. Once their opinion genuinely stops steering you, presence costs you nothing, because you are just visiting people. Attention becomes easy to withhold, because the bait stops carrying weight. Information stops leaking, because you no longer feel the pull to justify yourself. Tier 4 is the engine. The other three get easier the moment it closes, and stay hard forever while it is open. There is a simple way to hear which thoughts are borrowed, and it works, because borrowed thoughts have a different sound. Your own judgment usually arrives with reasons attached, and it stays calm under questioning. A borrowed voice arrives as a verdict with no reasoning underneath, and it carries heat. Who do you think you are? That is not analysis. That is somebody else's sentence, stored in your head, playing back in first person. Test any hesitation you have by asking it one question. Why? If it can answer with something specific about your actual situation, it is yours, and you should listen to it. If it just repeats itself louder, or produces a feeling instead of a reason, it was installed. And installed voices do not get a vote, no matter how long they have been sitting in the room. You are not being disloyal by removing them. You are just finally distinguishing between advice you once received and thinking you are doing now. One more mechanism before we turn this around, because it is the most common way family disrespect actually travels. And Bowen named it too. He called it triangles. When tension exists between two people in a family, it does not stay between two people. It pulls in a third, because a two-person system under strain is unstable, and a third party absorbs the pressure. So, your mother tells you what your brother said. Your brother tells you what your mother thinks. Your sister calls to relay how disappointed someone is in you. Everyone is talking about everyone, through everyone, and almost nobody is talking directly. You have been the third point of that triangle your whole life, and probably thought of it as being close to your family. It is not closeness. It is being used as a pressure valve, and it is where most of the disrespect gets delivered, because a message routed through a third person arrives without a sender you can address. The counter is a single sentence, said pleasantly, and it is one of the most useful lines a man can own. That sounds like something you should talk to him about. Then change the subject. You are not being cold. You are declining to be the wire. Do it consistently for a few months, and you will notice you stop receiving reports, and the amount of family conflict living in your head drops by half, because most of it was never yours. It was in transit, and you were the road. And watch what being the wire actually costs you, because it is more than annoyance. Every relayed message makes you carry a grievance you cannot resolve, about a conversation you were not in, between two people who will probably be fine by next week, while you are still holding it. Worse, it quietly poisons your own relationship with the person being discussed. You start seeing your brother through your mother's description of him, and you are no longer dealing with your brother at all. You are dealing with a version of him that was handed to you. Refusing to be the wire is not just self-protection. It is how you get your actual relationships back, unfiltered, one at a time. Now the turn, and this one is going to land differently than you expect. Everything above assumes you are the one being reached. Flip it, right now. There are people who cannot cut you off either. Your children. The people who report to you at work, a younger sibling, someone who needs something from you and does not have the option of walking away. They are sitting on your ladder, and the tears they get are set entirely by you. So run the 4 honestly. Presence. Are you physically there, or are you there in the way you resent your own father being there? In the room, but 3 feet behind his eyes. Attention. When your kid tells you about something small, do they get your face, or the top of your head while your thumb moves? Information. Do the people who depend on you know where they actually stand with you, or do they have to guess? And does the guessing keep them careful around you? And influence. Whose voice is going to show up in your son's head in 30 years? When he is about to take a risk? It is going to be yours. That is not a question. The only open question is what it says. That is the uncomfortable symmetry of this entire video. You have been someone's difficult family member, not maliciously, the same way yours were. Because a man who has never sorted out which voice in his head is his own, tends to install his voice in somebody else's, automatically, without ever choosing to. This is what Bowen was describing when he talked about patterns transmitting across generations. The pattern does not require anyone to be cruel. It only requires that nobody stops and looks at it. And here is the thing worth sitting with. Tonight, your children are not going to remember most of what you said to them. They will remember which tier they lived on, whether they had your attention or only your presence. Whether they could tell you a real thing without it being used later. Whether your approval was something they had to keep earning on terms that moved. Nobody remembers a lecture. Everyone remembers what it felt like to need something from you and not be sure what they would get. That is the inheritance, and it is not written in what you intend. It is written in the 4 tiers, every ordinary evening, whether you are paying attention to it or not. You just looked at it. That is the whole difference, and it is enough. A man who can see the ladder can choose what he hands down it. So there is the access ladder, presence, which you may owe, and which costs you the least. Attention, which you owe nobody, and which is what they were actually taking. Information, the supply line that turns into ammunition. And influence, the tier you thought you closed, which is still quietly running your biggest decisions, in a voice you stopped recognizing as borrowed. 4 tiers. You do not control whether they are in your life. You control every one of these, and the debate from the middle. Confront directly or quietly change what they get. Here is my answer, and it is not the heroic one, with a person capable of hearing it. Have the conversation, once plainly. With a person who has spent 30 years demonstrating, they will rewrite any conversation into evidence against you. The direct approach is not honesty, it is a donation. You are handing them a scene they will retell for a decade. The quiet change of tears is not avoidance. Avoidance is leaving. This is staying, and simply no longer being available. And it works precisely because there is nothing to argue with. You cannot fight a man about a boundary he never announced. Here is what changes when the ladder is yours. The comment still comes, because they are who they are, and it lands on nothing. The Sunday dinner stops costing you the following Tuesday. And one day, you will notice something strange, that you feel genuine affection for a person you used to dread seeing. Because affection was always possible, it was just impossible while they had the controls. Distance was never the goal. Control of the tears was. And when a man has it, he can afford to love people who are difficult. Say it one more time and mean it now. I control access, presence, attention, information, influence. 4 tears, mine to set. That truly closes the power laws. See the tears, hold cold. Say less, name the weapon, read the man, and control the access. If you have been with the pack through all of it, you already stand differently in rooms you used to dread, and the people around you have felt it before they could name it. Now the series turns, because there is one force running underneath every room you have learned to read, and almost nobody reads it correctly. Money, not how to make it, but how it actually behaves, who it moves toward, and why it flows to the calmest man in the room rather than the loudest or the hardest working. That starts Thursday, with the reason being free is the most expensive mistake a man can make. Subscribe so you catch the opening, keep the forms, change the substance, go to the dinner, give them the afternoon, and keep the other 3 tears. Because you were never trapped in that room. You were just handing over 4 things when you only ever owed 1.